Ladies and gentlemen, very much welcome to Karlskrona and to this building, Dockside. Originally it was used as loading the ships going to Poland. So we are actually on the quayside where all the trucks and the cars went on the ships. Nowadays, since the weather is so good in Karlskrona, we have to put the shades down. But otherwise, you will see the beautiful Stena Vision Spirit, I think, over there, which is now the ships now trafficking this route, Karlskrona-Gdynia. They are way too big now to fit into this place. But this was where Stena Line started. My name is Marcus Fredriksson, and I'm one of the conferencier here today. And I'm very, very happy to have a colleague here, Marcus, which is we're carrying the same name to make it a bit more easy for everyone. So I'm very happy to have you here, since I'm definitely sure that I am the person here knows least about the topics we are going to talk about today. But I think that Marcus here is a bit more suitable for that. Marcus, could you please tell us a bit about your background?
Thank you, Marcus. I will do that. My name is spelled with a K and his with a C, so it's very simple to distinguish between us. So, by the way, my background is from the Navy, most of my career, and from the Coast Guard. And I also have done a tour in Brussels working for the EU Commission. So I've mostly been dealing with, in the respective works, with maritime security. Now, lastly, the EU Maritime Security Strategy implementation in Brussels and Coast Guard development, but also from the Navy and Coast Guard side, capability development and maritime surveillance. So that's my little bit about my background.
So you will help us drill a bit harder, a bit deeper, and a bit keeping the discussions and questions.
Yeah, I will be really hard on the lecturers here and the audience as well. So.
But also what I think is good that you try to also give the audience some things to think about before each speaker comes on stage. And I think that's a kind of a smart move.
I'll do my best to keep the audience busy and not sit with your laptops and so on, to use the Wi-Fi system to instead be a little bit active in the discussions.
Before we let Peter on stage, we also have another representative from the Blue Science Park, Malin, over here. She's very interesting to find out what are you fancy to eat at lunch today. And to make it simple, it's fish or meat to start with. So just give a hand who is thinking that fish could be a good day today. Yeah, that's what I said, 27. The rest is meat. So, very good. There will also be, of course, a vegetarian option for those who like that. Very good. Peter, please come on stage and tell us a bit about your background, maybe.
Thank you. My name is Peter Ryman. I work for the Blue Science Park as a project manager. And when we first get this option to have a maritime conference from Daniel Sköld, which I'm most grateful for, and for Malin. Where is she? Yes, they have done all these arrangements around this conference, so thank you so much. When we took this initiative, we thought about what shall we do with this conference. In some way, we thought about having a consortium of industry, academy, and agencies to create some kind of good project ideas for the future. So tomorrow we will have a workshop, which I look forward to more than this conference, where we should sit down and try to work with some good project ideas and try to create some good future works together. So that's all for me, and now I think we have...
Yeah, do you have any special expectation for the day?
Yeah, I have a lot of expectations about GNSS and Lars, because that's what I'm most interested in.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah.
It will be good. But yes, we would also like to take the opportunity now to welcome Magnus and Anna-Lena Cederström from Region Blekinge, sorry. Welcome on stage. Give them a big applause so we get this feeling going.
And first, I will welcome you all to Blekinge as well. And I'm sure that all of you know about Region Blekinge and Daniel Sköld, who works with Region Blekinge as well. And first, of course, I would say from the part of Region Blekinge, I'm very proud that for the last 14 years, we have been leader in transnational cooperation for increased maritime safety in the Baltic Sea region. And we have developed and successfully managed large-scale transnational projects on oil contingency planning, maritime transport safety, and marine spatial planning. I also sure that most of you know the project Baltic Master, and the project was implemented between 2004 and 2012, and were also a European flagship. And the Baltic Master project focused on emphasizing the local and regional level as vital players for improved maritime safety in the Baltic Sea. In 2012, we launched the project Baltic Maritime Science Park, and then focus shifted a bit to entail also blue growth and maritime innovation. And also over the years, we have, together with you here, developed a large network in the maritime field, consisting public authorities, maritime universities and science parks, as well as companies from all over the Baltic Sea region. And at this point, we are happy that the Blue Science Park is established, and we are also ready and pleased to hand over our results and also integrate our work in the Blue Science Park. And also, of course, the network into the maritime pillar of Blue Science Park. And but it's still our ambition for Region Blekinge to supporting blue growth in the Baltic Sea, and with Blue Science Park as our representatives. So I'm happy to have Magnus Forsbrand here with my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna-Lena. And thank you for handing over this to us. Welcome again to Karlskrona and to Blue Science Park. As Anna-Lena said, we're a new established science park. We have 3 different areas. We have maritime technology, which is the base industry of Karlskrona when it was founded 330 years ago as a naval city. We have as a second pillar, we have telecom and IT, which was a branch that grew in the 1990s. And we have as a third pillar is e-health, taking IT into healthcare sector. And earlier this year, we were appointed the Swedish hotspot for Internet of Things by the Vinnova, the Swedish Innovation Authority. We're very proud of that, because it was here where Telenor started to connect machines in the mid-1990s, and we will hear probably a little bit more about that today. But we are now looking to use our experience in the Internet of Things also in the maritime sector, for example, connected ships, etc. So I'm very proud to have this international conference here and to share experiences across the Baltic and to use technology development to help overcome challenges in climate and in politics. So that's why we focus on safety and security. So very warm welcome again, and good luck with the conference. I will be here all day and all evening, and also tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. By that, it's high time for us to kick off this historical conference with the first guest speaker today. Before I let Tobias on stage, Marcus, what is your expectation on Tobias' speech here?
I think it will be a good scene setter, and probably one of the best speaks today. And I will also take the opportunity to direct myself to the audience please be active. Think about questions you may want to ask, and things that relates to your own area of expertise. I mean, it's a great variety of expertise sitting in this room today. So please, from your own standpoint, be aware of that there will be questions to ask, and there will be a day tomorrow as well for the group work that we have to do tomorrow for those who are staying for tomorrow. And I don't want to say too much to you, but to the audience, that when you hear the next presentation, imagine that it all starts with yourself. It's not somebody else that does it for you, or somebody that is on a higher level that initiates or starts evolution. It's you on your level here. And I think I leave it like that, and unless you have anything, so.
Very good. And now, Tobias, welcome up on stage, and give Tobias a big hand.
Thank you.
From 0 to 1, accelerate your process to achieve innovation output. Before I let you start, I also know that you're very into ice hockey, since we are most probably you heard of that. We are very successful in ice hockey this year. Now we've been for some years now. But if you talk about the innovation in sports, what is Peter Forsberg offensive tackle an innovation?
Well, I think if you look back to what Peter and others been doing, I think that was kind of innovation at those days. That was kind of when I was playing also. But I think if you look at it today, it might sound really strange, but the most innovation we see in hockey and other sports is basically data science. To look at statistics when people are playing and basically recruiting players based on statistics. So that's actually kind of innovation. It will tie into what I'm talking about today.
Quite fascinating. I just when we talked a bit before, you said that now you're recruiting the general managers and the leaders. They're more looking for statistics persons rather than a long athletic career, maybe.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at general managers in NHL, you see the first ones being recruited are kind of data wizards and young rather than the old experienced sports managers. So this is a kind of a shift, and we will see if it's successful or not, but so far it's been quite good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So please take us on an innovation journey.
Thank you. Nice to be here today. So I think I'll talk about innovation, but mostly when I hear people talk about innovation, there's a lot of talk about innovation, and people see this as kind of creative process and all that stuff, and talk about creativity. I will not talk about creativity today. I will talk more about how you actually go about looking at innovation and try to work with it. Still, I kind of find these images inspiring because this is what people see as innovation, where you have a lot of colors and a mix-up. I have a little bit of a cold, but I hope you can manage my language anyway. So the talk was 0 to 1, and I will come back to that because 0 to 1 is actually a kind of a method or an expression. When we talk about innovation, you can't really leave out one of the persons who had the greatest influence on society today, and that's Albert Einstein. And I think he made a lot of quotes, but this quote is one I like. Anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new. And this is actually what it comes down to. It's trying new things. If you do the same thing over and over again and you kind of expect a new result, that is really just making you look like an idiot. So I think it's coming down to trying to do new things. When I work with this in practice, we usually talk about fail often and fast to succeed sooner. And that is the entire approach. What I will go into is how you actually do this then, of course. So a little bit of my background. Just you realize I'm not kind of the creativity guy. I'm a development engineer, mechanical engineering. I usually build stuff. I support companies in building stuff. So if I go back to my own track record, I've been working with the largest aerospace projects, car manufacturers, a lot of aerospace jet engine manufacturing, trains. I will take some examples from construction equipment, and then also mass production, like Tetra Pak, 300 billion boxes they produce every year. That's just insane amount. And if you compare that to aerospace, which is kind of a one-off manufacturing. So working today as a professor at Blekinge Institute of Technology. I spent time in Luleå most of my careers, and also spent time on Stanford. So there's a good mix here. Creativity, innovation, that's kind of the Stanford way. And if we're looking at the Swedish or Scandinavian way, it's more what we call rational product development, incremental development. And what we are doing today is basically tying these together. So if we're looking at things that we are working with, for example, aerospace, you come down to understanding how you can drive value before you build planes. So we build digital models, and if you're trying to understand whether you should put the feature in the plane or not, you want to do that. You want to know if that feature adds value to the end customer before you build the plane. So this basically means you want to know the answer of something 10 years before you put it on the market. So this is what we basically do, using digital models. So what you basically see here is a kind of a model chain. This was in an article from New Technique, where you kind of have a color-coded aircraft, and the color is basically green, you make money, red, you lose money on something that is not built. And this goes all the way down to jet engine components and the different parts of the process. I'm not going to dwell onto that, but if you want to know more on that, you will find that on productdevelopment.se, where we basically have our kind of research portfolio. But when I'm summarizing this to people, we usually work with innovation capability, how you train people to be able to deliver innovation. So for me, it's not a chance, it's a given. So I claim that any company that wants to work with innovation can deliberately do so and deliver an innovation output. So that's kind of the interesting thing. Then we work with values, and value basically means that you are, of course, making money, but values can be intangible. So it's not just about money, it's realizing what creates value with an end customer. We do everything with simulation, and in general, we do everything with models. So what is the background here? It's actually the word digitalization. A lot of people are talking about digitalization, but what's really going on is that we see that technologies are developing exponentially, like the transistor and everything. And what it's all about is our ability to harness this exponential growth. So technology is accelerating. In 30 years, we will have the singularity point where computers will outsmart us. How can we cope with that? How can we deal with that? So it's all about understanding how we can build on the fact that technologies are going exponential. And the saying I usually is that it has never been simpler to do things, and it will never be harder. So whatever you do today is as hard as it ever will get. It will get simpler. It's simpler and simpler to use new technology. So this is what we're kind of building on. And if you're looking at this kind of process from down left up to right, when I started working in engineering, we had manual drawings, manual operations. 10 years ago, we had a kind of combination of manual things and semi-automated and digital drawings, etc. And today, when we're building things, we're building everything digital. So we kind of have the digital twin we're talking about, digital aircraft and everything. And if you go back to the introduction we had of Karlskrona as a naval city, I could actually go even further down here. And if you go visit Marine Museum, you will find a model chamber. The model chamber is physical models of what people should build. How do you tell someone to give you 1,000 nails? You give them a wood nail and say, replicate this in 1,000 copies. So that process has kind of been going on, right? So I'm just building on the tradition we have in Karlskrona to do models and use these models to do things faster and faster. And since I work in research, when you kind of look at this process, you also understand that it takes time, of course. So now I'm looking at a kind of technology to reduce sound in jet engines. If you hear the Swedish fighter jet, the JAS Gripen, it kind of kills your ears if you're there when it starts. But if you look at the commercial airplanes today, they have a really low sound signature. And if you look at this technology now being in aircrafts, we have it flying since 2005, but the early development of this started back in 1980. So this is the kind of development process that we're looking at. Original ID, basic science, technology readiness level 1, 2, and then 3. This is typically the basic science. You understand what you can do with things. I typically work with applied science, TRL level 4 to 6. Then we had it over to the commercial industry that kind of makes the implementation and makes things fly. But this is the process we have to understand when we're dealing with things. What happens in some areas, this becomes faster, but it's still a process we need to understand that not all inventions in new materials are bound to enter into products tomorrow. So today we have materials like graphene. You probably heard of graphene, which everybody's looking at. Wow, that's really amazing. It's down here. I expect it to take another 10 years before you will find it in some kind of semi-commercial use up here at TRL level 6 to 7. So this tells you when you should kind of start exploring new technologies. If you're a business company wanting to make money on your products, you should probably stay away on the trying to implement the newest materials, but you should probably spend time in research, understanding what those new materials can do for you. So this is a lot of things we do in research, understanding what you can do with technologies and materials, helping organizations to be able to implement it. So coming back to this with exponentiality then. So Magnus was talking about IoT being a big thing in Karlskrona, and it's the same here. This is going exponential. If I'm talking about Tetra Pak boxes, probably every one of those 300 billion boxes that go out will have an IP address by next year. So you understand that this is just going straight up. If every box can be connected, what should it do? What should it say? What should it tell you? Because you can waste IP addresses because you have them in abundance. And this is what happens with exponential technologies. Just to show you some examples of companies who are exploring exponential technologies. It's really interesting because you all heard about Alibaba. It's kind of the most valuable retailer. They have no inventory. Okay? You have Uber, which is the world's biggest taxi company. They have no fleet. You have Airbnb, which is the kind of largest hotel accommodation business. They own no real estate. And of course, you have Facebook, which is the biggest media publisher in the world, which has no content. They produce no content. This is kind of interesting, right? They own nothing. Still, they create huge values. So what's the exponential technology here? Well, it's really simple. It's internet. The ability that I put something up there and it's available directly at the other end. And what they're doing is, some people call this disruptive. I just call this incremental innovation because what they're doing is actually creating values on an existing infrastructure. They're not creating anything new. They just squeeze themselves in between the existing hotel players, for example, and us renting hotels and say, why are you renting a hotel? You could rent an apartment instead. And what they're doing is exploiting the blind side of existing businesses. And these existing businesses, they could have done the same, but they didn't because they are unable to innovate. And this is the main thing I'm targeting, is the existing business inability to innovate. Because most of you here probably work in existing businesses, right? Anybody here working startups? One. The rest of you are working existing businesses, okay? So of course, existing businesses are afraid. In Sweden, we tried to put a ban on Uber, saying, wow, this is dangerous and everything. Who do you think you're going to win that battle? Taxi companies or the consumers? Of course, the consumers are going to win. Consumers always win. But this is what we have to deal with. What we're working with here is basically, I call them the 4Ds. Digitalization, you take analog things, turn it into digital. Dematerialization, you do more with less. Demonetarization, less cost for more function. And democratization, accessibility, lowering the bar, making it available. So digitalization, what is that? The first one is really, really simple. You take something which you have analog at your desk and you turn it into digital. Take a regular paper, a paper copy. If you want to spread it, before you had to copy it and send it away. Today, you make it digital, a PDF, and you share it through Dropbox. Really, really low cost, low effort. You can spread it to whoever you want. That's the simple part of digitalization. Extremely low cost of duplicating and scaling. Dematerialization. I mean, this is all the things you had, or at least I had, if we go back some 30 years, right? Everything exists today in this one, and the smart gadgets we have. I mean, Spotify took away the record store. Amazon took away the bookstore. Of course, they still exist, but if you look at the scalability, How many of you consume books through audio today? Anyone? How many consume books through digital versions, Kindle or anything? Yeah. I will still say I love to read a book, but if I have to read 10 reports, I'd rather take them digital. So it comes down with everything here is that you can squeeze it in here. That's the kind of dematerialization, okay? You do more with less. The demonetarization can be seen more as a business model. It's the freemium model. So the first fix is free. I can use Spotify on this phone. It doesn't cost me anything. I will be pushed commercials. If I want to increase my usage and I want to get rid of the commercials, I buy it, okay? But again, low threshold, low cost. But it's a freemium model. So it's a completely new business model. Give away for free. If people like it, you give them an offer. Small costs, you pay monthly fees instead, and you have access to all the music you want. Nobody in my house consumes a CD record these days. I have them. I'm thinking about throwing them away, but I'm kind of nostalgic about them. I also have these regular vinyl records. But the fun thing here is that this low cost enables a completely new business model. And that's what it's all about, understanding how new tech, new solution can create a new business model. If you try to do your old business model with new technology, you are going to fail. And if you are not failing, it means that someone else is going to do it better and you still fail, right? But the fun thing is the ones who have the existing businesses are the first one who has the ability to actually make new business on their existing products, of course. But again, coming back, then you have to be able to do this. Democratization then. I think the curve here we look at is actually how internet is being deployed all over the world. So we're talking about the developed world up here. We're looking at global world, etc. And you see this is kind of scaling. So what I'm saying here is like, if you think about us living in so-called Western world, we have internet, we've had computers and everything. If you think now that, okay, let's go to Africa and then we just repeat the entire story all over again. Let's sell them desktop computers. Let's sell them laptop computers, etc. That's not what's happening. They skip directly to the end game. You put up cell towers, they have cell access. So then what you find is people will only use the things that's good for them. So you will find solar panels to charge basically tablets, and then you find a small guy sitting in a small wooden shed consuming Netflix. This looks really, really strange because you see this old house, clay floor, and they sit there and kind of consuming Netflix. They go directly to the end solution. Why? It's because the bar has been lowered. So we're not going to make money on them, but the fun thing is that if they have an idea, they have instant access to a global market through app stores, Android markets. They can push something directly to the global world. So this is coming down to democratization. 3D printing is a kind of democratized technology. Why? It's because everyone can kind of produce whatever they want. So instead of producing something at the factory and then shipping it, which is unsustainable, you produce a digital model. Then you ship the digital model through Dropbox. I download it, I print it at my home. Of course, this is really, really slow. It's low. It's a high effort still today, but aerospace is printing a lot of stuff on our planes today because they make money on printing it. Because you can print unique parts without the extra cost. So this is a very classic bottle opener. The solid material is 10 grams. If you make the regular one, it's 4 grams in weight. And if you make a kind of topology optimized 3D print, it's beneath 1 gram. And this complexity doesn't cost a thing because the printer doesn't care. It just prints it. So it's nothing I have to sit there manually and do. If I should do this manually, it would take tons of time. But printing it doesn't matter. Add a logo, doesn't matter. This is democratization, making it possible for anyone to do whatever they want. So 3D printing is at the stage where it's about to kick off, but it's not ready yet. So a little bit about innovation then. I usually work with companies telling them to have perspectives of innovation. You need to have perspectives. You need to look at products. That can also be services. You need to understand how you make progress. You need to understand the process. You need to understand that you work with people. So you have to kind of educate yourself within these fields. And of course, the product is kind of what you achieve. Process is how you work. The people is how you act and think. This can be educated. And progress is how you track progress. Okay? Then you can have a lot of processes, but I usually kind of try to stick to one simple process. You need to initiate something. You need to find inspiration. You need to do ideation, and then you need to implement. These things you can do in a day. It's really simple. With 3D printing, you can actually print in a day also. But usually, if I was going to give you some example of products, most of you say, wow, you know, I had that idea 10 years ago. I had that idea. You usually see this when products come out to market. You have thought of that before. Anybody have seen this before? A product come out and you're like, yeah, I thought about that. It's because these things are kind of simple because they cost very little. But to actually implement it, here you have the kind of, we usually talk about the paralysis of unlimited opportunity. You can have 100 concepts, but at the end you need to make sure that one concept is happening. This is where most companies fail, because suddenly it starts to cost money, and then you have to risk something, and then you enter into management. What is the benefit of putting a new product on the market? And on the contrary, how much can I optimize the existing product and still make money? So I have a guaranteed 10% cost optimization or a possible 100% value increase, which has the highest risk. And it will always fall back to people doing the cost optimization. It's because they don't know how to deal with innovation. And if we're looking into criterias, so whenever I'm telling people to assess their kind of innovation, you have to look at 3 angles: desirability, viability, and feasibility. So what are those? Desirability, is it useful? If I create this, is it someone who is going to use it? Do they want to use it? Feasibility, is it actually possible? I love the beam me up machine, the transporter in Star Trek, but can I build it? It's kind of useless for me to throw a Kickstarter campaign on that unless it's possible to build, right? And is it profitable? Is it possible to make money on the users wanting it with the technology that's there? If you don't think about these 3 things, then you have a huge problem. So usually these are the 3 criteria I want people to think about. Then also you have to understand that even if I'm pointing it out this way, innovation is concurrent. It's non-linear. It's you jumping back and forth, and it's iterative. You're doing it in cycles. You might spend 2 years over there in initiation. You might spend a lot of time down here in production. But so it's not kind of just a simple process that you go along with. I do have a little bit of innovation for managers also. You should talk about investing in innovation is investing in the future. Why? And remember, you will get all this presentation afterwards and also the background data. So if you look at this, you ever heard the term core business? Down here is core business, where you have solutions and customers who are existing. If I go up through these angles, I have up here new products for new businesses, new products for new consumers, okay? So what we usually have is that down to the left, this is what you know and what you do. Up to the right is the things you don't know and don't do today. So how does it work? Well, in general, you find a lot of products down there. That's all fine. But most companies, they see, oh, let's stick to core business, and they only have that. And what is happening when people are stopping to buy those products? What you're going to replace them with? What's the core product of the future? You need to have some ideas in that kind of adjacent area, could be built on existing products, and you also need something which is truly transformational, something new up here. And then people come back and say, okay, how much money should I spend? It's actually quite simple. You should do something like this. If there comes in ideas, you say we had 10 ideas, and you're looking for that transformational products, you just line them up and say, no, 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 yes. Yes to the 10th. Then you start over. No, 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 yes. Does it matter which product you say yes to? In reality, doesn't. If you employed smart people, no person will ever give you a bad idea. They will give you what they think is the best. So you can start with whatever idea you want, but you just have to say yes to something. So it's very simple. And just to show you the facts behind this, it's looking something like this. If you spend 70% of your money in core business today, you will only get a 10% revenue of that in the future. But if you spend 10%, this is why I say yes to 1 of 10 projects, 10% of your money on innovation. You don't have to spend everything, just 10%. You will get 70% of that money back in the future, few new products. But if you don't have a dot up there in the corner, you don't have new ideas, then you don't have new products, you will make nothing. It's that simple. So start looking at your businesses. How often do you say no? I have tons of good in research, bad for the companies. Example of companies who honestly did good risk assessment and killed their future and basically went bankrupt. Saab is one such company. Cars then. And this, of course, depends on what discipline you are in. Of course, if you are Lidl or a company over here, you might only need to spend this. If you're like Ericsson over here, you probably should spend half of your funding in research for the future. So that's kind of background. Let's move it into 0 to 1. If you want to read 0 to 1, do read the book 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. I'm mixing two theories here today. So the good thing about, if I'm just summarizing the 0 to 1 idea, is basically what company is nobody building? The next Mark Zuckerberg is not going to build another social network. The fun thing is that all these companies were built because nobody else has built these companies. So if you're looking at the things that are not being built, then you have an option. If you just try to build something that is already built and doing it better, you're just kind of exploiting a small angle. So this is the entire 0 to 1 philosophy. And the late Steve Jobs and Apple were kind of looking at this in a really interesting way. So what is not being built? And you're kind of looking at scaling it. Hard to use, easy to use, smart, stupid, or not so smart. And he basically put the product out there. And what you have up here, that was the iPhone, right? So what is a good idea? It's taking something to 0 to 1. And what is this 0 to 1? Well, 1 to many, that is just scaling an existing idea and making more of those, which basically means you're going to enter into a cost competition market. 0 to 1 is building that doesn't exist, which means you create the market. So you know who now have more than, who has all the revenue in the cell phone market. So I'm not talking about sales in numbers, I'm talking about making money. So who's making all the money in the cell phone market today? Apple. Samsung used to have 25%, but then their phone started to explode. So I mean, if you look at how many devices are being sold, that's a completely different picture, but it's about making money on the devices you're selling, right? And Apple takes all that money. And the fun thing then, if you're thinking about taking something from 0 to 1, is that you have to look at new products. And the new products, they kind of need to be 10 times better than previous manifestations. And the fun thing is here, this is why we usually talk about exponential, 10 times or something. Usually people say it's impossible until it is possible. And I use Tesla here because it's such a good example. I'm going to go into that. Before Tesla built the cars, people say you can't build an electric car. Then Tesla built them and now everyone's like, wow, Tesla is really cool. And it's possible. So the method here, really, really simple method. It's called the Lean Startup. It's also a book for that. It's based on minimal viable prototype, sprints. Coming back to that again, that Einstein said, fail often, or actually that was my saying, but try something new, right? So what you do is you take an idea, you build it fast, you measure the output, and you learn from it, and you do this in cycles. That's what you do. This is not the normal way existing businesses operate, but this is how you should operate. Does it work? Well, let's take the example again with Tesla. So first, the end game of Elon Musk and Tesla is not to build cars. It's to kill big oil. It's to kill oil industry. And just to look at cars, the Tesla, this is the Model X, it's still using a lot of supply chain, okay? So it's still a car, but the interesting thing is they've gone from hundreds to 20 moving parts. And it's actually not much of innovation here, but if you take away the combustion engine, which is kind of a lot of moving parts, and you put electric motor, and you put batteries, which is kind of laptop batteries, all glued together, you have a very simple platform. This is like doing a race car on tracks at home when we were kids. It's the same thing. Why didn't people do this before? It's because people were kind of thinking about building one battery cell, one big battery cell. But mean time to failure says that 80% of its capacity will be there in 5 years, but that means that 20% of the cars will be unusable. So how do you solve that? Okay, you take a lot of batteries. So then instead, when you put a lot of batteries together, you will have 80% of the car battery pack working after 5 years, but it's not completely depleted. Okay? This is not really new technology, it's just using application in the right way. Here comes the complex picture then. What did he do? He scaled. So prototypes. First prototype Tesla did, what was that? Take a Roadster and say, hey, I'm going to build an electric car. Take the Roadster, take out the combustion engine, put in the electrical engine, asking people, hey, if I'm building this car, will you buy it? Basically kickstart the campaign. Enough people said, yeah, sure, I'm all in, let's do this. And he did it. Next thing, he comes back with a bigger quest, model, which one was that? That was Model S, saying, hey, I will build a premium car. Are you in for it? People doing down payments. He delivers the car, builds creative confidence, makes money, and come back. And now we have the Model 3. So the Model 3 has been sold, or not sold, but people have put down payments for 500,000 cars, 10,000 Swedish crowns per car. That's kind of amazing, right? Before actually building the car. So this is the entire business model. One prototype, make money. Next prototype, make money by selling that. Last prototype, which is killing oil industry. At the same time, you're building infrastructure through Gigafactory, Powerwall, superchargers, etc. We have the first privately funded supercharger here in town through Mikael Blomqvist. And how is this revolution making the industry kind of disappear in terms of oil? Well, it's coming down to this one. Car price, high, low. Range, high, low. There is no car existing over here in the affordable good range. Guess where the Model 3 is going to show up? It's going to show up over here. And the basic fact is that when an affordable long-range car exists, electric car, there is no need to ever buy a combustion car again. And then he kind of killed big oil with that. And of course, he's going to build battery factories, etc., to back this system up. But jumping in then to local application, how can this look like? Well, I'm going to take one of my own examples. So everybody's seen these yellow machines, okay? It's moving dirt. Do you think we're going to move more or less dirt in the future? More? Yep. So Volvo is kind of competing with Caterpillar here. They're moving dirt at 72 cents per ton. Caterpillar like 75. That's a kind of cost competition. So with these methods and approaches, what happened? Well, Volvo developed the first electrical bucket, basically. Full electrical. It drives digitally, data-driven. It takes care of itself, load, unload. Full electrical, this is electrical with a 3-liter engine instead of a 13-liter engine. Think about sustainability here. You have a kind of reduction in emissions with between 50 and 90%. In a business where you usually are keen on finding 1 to 2% per year. So what is this doing? It's changing the entire business. This is not coming out on the market, but it's their minimum viable prototype they are exploring now with their customer. So this is a big company completely changing the way they're working. So my final thing here, takeaways. What do? Relentless prototyping. You build prototypes with your customers to explore an area. You do this through minimal viable prototypes. It's not final product. You tell them it's a prototype and we'll explore it together. By doing this, you make money as you solve problems because they're paying to use the prototype. You build your ecosystem because at the same time you understand what kind of supporting solutions you need. And that means you're building the company path as you go along. This is basically doing a 0 to 1 startup running a lean startup strategy. So, questions?
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you, Tobias. Yeah. Is there any questions from the audience? I have a mic here, and remember, this is a day of interaction, so feel free to fire away. While you're thinking of that, we would just like to give you a small present.
Thank you.
Kind of assorted Karlskrona goodies over
Thanks.
there. So now all of your speakers know what you look forward to during the day. Marcus, do you have a small reflection on Tobias' talk here?
Thank you very much for a very insightful presentation, and it's really interesting to hear about this. And I immediately, coming from the European Commission, thought about how do you deal with this TRL process in a bureaucratic organization where there are lots of wheels driving at in different directions, and it's very hard to, for example, find the right legislation, the right rules and regulations for a bigger audience, which is not necessarily driving in the same direction of all actors.
Well, I don't think it's a big problem. It's just coming down to understanding the end game. I mean, take aerospace, which is really requirement driven and also driven by regulations. It's coming down to, if you want to achieve lower emissions and sustainability, you have to change the technology. And if everybody kind of appreciates that on the board level, then it comes down to, hey, okay, we want to decrease CO2 emissions. So I want them to say, let's decrease CO2 emissions. And then if you say then that in 20 years it's not possible, you are not allowed to fly a plane that emits CO2, then you put that as a kind of demand on your innovation process to deliver technology that is CO2 free. So it's coming down to having the stakeholders to make the decisions on legislation and then allow the innovation teams to work with that. And that is what European Union is doing, the governments and also the companies working in this field.
Thank you for your very interesting presentation. Very inspiring. A question would be, I see all the potential for the technology development, but unfortunately I see no real solution in the business world, the commercial thing. Your commercial model, maybe my understanding is wrong, builds on what we have. Do we really solve all the problems we have in the world with your nice models? Technology will be further developed, no question. But I have some doubts that this will cure the world.
That's actually the only single question I work with. I took technology as an example, but as I said, products and solutions, we're dealing a lot with something called product services. So that's not my research team, but there are other research teams in the world. But saying you can look at complete business innovation also without changing technologies. It's coming down to realizing that you can change business. And this kind of 0 to 1 is exactly the same. You don't have to use a new technology. If you take and go back to Airbnb, they actually did pure business innovation on an existing technology. They didn't do any tech development. It was pure business innovation in terms of business model and scaling that. So did not invent anything, did not put one single crown into tech research. So this is Airbnb, Uber, and all the others. So the evidence for that is out there too. So yes, it's possible to do this for business also. But this doesn't mean that everybody will be making money. It's a fierce competition. People will go bankrupt. Just saying that if you don't want to go bankrupt, you can work with reinventing your business model also in the same way as you reinvent technology.
In short, what is the role of the public sector in driving innovation?
Well, I actually shared an article this morning looking at statistics over time. What has been driving the innovations we are scaling from today has been governmental research over the past years. Just drawing a curve from your side, this was governmental research in US, and it's going down like that. It's private companies starting to fund innovation, which basically means that they lock it in. So it's not possible for everybody to scale on it. This is a huge problem. So public sector funding has a huge role, and if that is going away, it's going to be the private companies driving that innovation, and then we are in the hands of the private company and their shareholders. So this is a huge problem because public funding is going down. So you can look at a lot of technology and solutions we are benefiting from. Then was funded by governmental research.